Okay, we're in A Raisin in the Sun, Act 2, Scene 1. Make sure that you have your book because this is an open book quiz, again, on Act 2, Scene 1. First question, Asagai and George are character foils. On what particular issue do they disagree? Okay, so Asagai and George again are character foils. What do they disagree on? Well, I think it's on the issue of assimilation and African heritage. We know that one reason why Benita likes Asagai is because he helps her kind of connect to her African roots. Whereas George is more of an assimilationist, right? When she starts talking about African heritage, he says, "Oh dear, here we go, a lecture on the African past. Let's face it, baby, your heritage is nothing but a bunch of raggedy-ass spirituals and some grass huts." Okay, so clearly George is not buying into the whole connect to your spiritual and African roots, right? Both men criticize Benita's hair as well. What is it about Benita's hair in each situation that each man criticizes? Well, in Act 1, Asagai, at the bottom of pages 61 to 62, calls her hair mutilated because she had styled it. She had tried to kind of straighten it a little bit. And he calls it mutilated again because she isn't keeping it natural. She is mutilating her hair in order to fit in. Whereas George, in Act 2, on page 80, he sees her natural hair and he goes, "What have you done? You look eccentric," is what he says. And so they have differing opinions on her hair as well. And I think her hair is kind of a symbol for the struggle between assimilation and kind of cultural heritage, right? Next question. Remember the article, A Child of Slavery That Taught a Generation, and remember the chapter from Stamped. Which philosophy on Black education does Walter believe in? Okay, so again, from the article and the chapter that you read, you learned a little bit about W.E.B. Du Bois and about Booker T. Washington. So which philosophy on Black education does Walter believe in? As a reminder, W.E.B. Du Bois was all about the talented 10th and educating the talented 10th, the very highest, smartest of the smart of Black America in order to lead Black America. He believed that higher level education will help Black people become more accepted by white intellectuals as well. Whereas Booker T. Washington was concerned with the other 90%, and he was more concerned about educating people in order to feed and clothe their families, right? Practical needs. So he was about educating people for manual labor and for vocations, right? So for careers. Just as a side note, because I love from the article, it mentions Julia Cooper. She was about high-level education for all, whether you're the talented 10th or the other 90%. And she was really a wonderful educator. She believed in working with students with all learning needs. So she believed in educating every individual person, no matter where they are or what educational background or intellectual ability that they have. And she was one of the first people who pointed out that a child's performance at school is impacted by their home lives. And so she has actually kind of been a trailblazer in the field of education because that's a well-known educational philosophy. Anyway, on the topic of which one does Walter fall in line with, well, he says this to George. He gets very, very frustrated. He says, "What the hell are you learning over there, filling up your heads? But they teaching you how to be a man? How to run a rubber plantation or a steel mill? Nah, just to talk proper and read books." So Walter is obviously kind of on the Booker T. Washington side in terms of Black education. Give me some practical knowledge. Give me something that's going to help me succeed in life rather than learning Latin and becoming an intellectual, right? That's Walter's perspective, whereas George is obviously on the Du Bois side, right? Real quick, and this is not a question I'm going to make you answer, but just something to talk about. Is there a social distinction between Walter and George Murchison? Yes, right? In fact, just their educational differences, the Du Bois side versus the Washington side. There is a social distinction as well. Walter is beneath George Murchison on the social ladder, right? And they resent each other for it, right? George Murchison looks down on Walter, and Walter looks at George Murchison and thinks of him as a snob, right? George Murchison refers to Walter as Prometheus, and why does it anger Walter? Okay, one reason why George calls Walter Prometheus is because Prometheus was a giant, right? He was actually a god. And Prometheus is the man who stole fire from the gods and gave it to man. But he was also known as a giant in Greek mythology. And earlier, before he calls Walter Prometheus, Walter says a bunch of things about being a giant, right? You got it made, bitter man, I'm a volcano. Bitter, here I am, a giant surrounded by ants. Ants who can't even understand what the giant is talking about. And so when George Murchison later calls Walter Prometheus, he's teasing him and making fun of him. Because, oh, you're such a giant. Yeah, Prometheus, sure. Okay. Okay, another question to answer. What is the important pronoun in the way Mama describes what the house will be between 86 and 92? Meaning, what will owning a house bring to the family? Okay. Okay, so again, what is the important pronoun in the way Mama describes what the house will be? Kind of towards the bottom of 92, page 92, she says, it's just a plain little old house, but it's made good and solid, and it will be ours. And so I think that pronoun ours is really, really important, because what will owning a house bring to the family? I think it will bring a sense of pride, ownership, obviously. And I think that the biggest thing is it will bring a sense of pride, right? That we did this. We were able to purchase this. And it's ours, right? That's just a beautiful thing. All right. And the last question, what do you think the sunlight or light represents in this book? The apartment they have now has only one window and very, very little light. Ruth asks Mama if there will be a lot of light in the new house, and Mama says there will be. So I think that sunlight, as they move into their new house where there will be more of it, sunlight probably represents hope and happiness, right? Here they have very little of hope and very little of happiness, but once they move to their bigger house, it will again, there will be a sense of pride and accomplishment there. There will be more hope and more happiness there, which I think that's what sunlight is representative of in this particular book. And that'll do it for Act 2, Scene 1.